श्रीमान वेंकटनाथार्य कवितार्किक केसरी वेदांताचार्यवर्यो मे सन्निधत्तां सदा हृति श्रीभासरंगपरकालमुनित्रयाप्तलक्ष्मात्मरक्षणैतित्युगागमान्तम् आचार्यभक्तिपरिपूतमनर्गशीलं गोपालदेशिकमुनिं गुरुमाश्रयामः। पराशरं मुनिवरं कतपौर्वान्निकः क्रियं मैत्रेयपरिपप्रच्छ प्रणिपत्याभिवाद्य च. So we were enjoying the life story of Jadabharatar, and those who listened to the narration of the Jadabharatar and his conversation with the king about the Atma, and they would be blessed, the listeners, the reciters, the readers, they will be bestowed with very great thoughts, with most all auspiciousness, Sarva Mangalam. That's mentioned in Vishnu Puranam. Sage Parasara goes on further to explain about the origin of Vedas. The Veda, the origin to sage Maitreya, and the division of Vedas. So the Vedas are Apaurusheyam. Apaurusheyam means authorless. It was not authored by anyone, but they are believed to be the reflections and revelations of the sages, the seers, the rishis. They have their words. It was revealed to them in an exalted state. The thoughts that came to them without any effort on their part, as they were uplifted to the domain of excitement, joy, ecstasy, and the secret of the universe, the riddle of existence, the satyam, the self-realization, all were laid bare before them. So they were so blessed, and they were deserving, because they were the channels of revelation. And it is the Upanishads, which is supposed to be the Veda Antam. That represents the brilliant utterances of the Jnanam, and it has been appropriately termed as the Antam, the end of Vedam, the peak, the zenith, the ascendance of the Vedam. They are the records of the mystical experiences of the sages. So the credit for systematizing the Vedas, the Upanishads, goes to Veda Vyasa. And the Vedas were in fragmented form, and Vyasa consolidated them and then divided into 4 standard categories or collections, depending on the order, depending on the accent, depending on the mantras. So they were named the 4 Vedas: Rig, Yajur, Sama, Atharvana, by sage Vedavyasa. Sage Vedavyasa taught Yajur Vedas to his disciples. So each of these Vedas was further classified into Samhitas, Brahmanas, Aranyakas, which includes Upanishads. So the Samhitas are like for the rituals, the verses for the rituals, the hymns for the rituals, Samhitas. Brahmanas are like the prose portion, which are like the performance details of those Anushtanams, Brahmanas. And Aranyakas and Upanishads are like the meaning of the hymns, or the mystical element. So Upanishads, owing to the great number of rishis living at various periods, embody their revelations, their sayings, their utterances with regard to the divinity, with regard to the realization or the redemption of the Atma. So it was Vyasa again who, with his genius, affirmed the unity and continuity of these Upanishads. There are very many Upanishads which we have recorded. Ishavasya Upanishad, Kenopanishad, Mundakopanishad, Kathopanishad, Prashnopanishad, then Mandukyopanishad, Taittiriyopanishad, Chandogyopanishad, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, all these. And so we would see that the Yajurvedas, there are 27 branches in Yajurveda. Sage Vaishampayana was a disciple of Sage Vedavyasa. Sage Vaishampayana was a disciple of Vedavyasa. And there were many congregations of these sages in the Himalayas. In the mountain, they used to assemble. There used to be satsangam of rishis, of the sages. The rules of the congregation mention that if anyone misses the congregation of that, the sages would be affected by some dosha. So sage Vaishampayana, once he was to miss certain congregation, certain satsangam, the meeting of those sages, due to unforeseen circumstances he had to miss. And because of that miss, he was worried that there would be dosham which will befall on them, Brahmahati dosham. And even after that, after 4 days, during the wee hours, around 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock, in the early hours in the morning, in the wee hours, he got up and he woke up. He was to go for his anushtanam, take bath in the nearby river. So he started walking, and he accidentally, because it was pitch dark, those days there was no bedroom light or the sleeping lamp, nothing like that. It was pitch dark. So he accidentally stepped on the neck of his nephew. It was very early morning and it was extremely dark and he couldn't see at all. There was zero visibility. So he stepped on the neck of his nephew who was sleeping, and because of that the nephew died. And sage Vaishampayana was hence afflicted by the Brahmahati dosham. Brahmahati is killing a Brahmin. That dosham fell on him. So he has to perform now prayaschittam. And this prayaschittam, or the expiatory rite, because there are certain rituals which need to be performed to get rid of this dosham, to get rid of the Brahmahati dosham. So sage Vaishampayana requested his disciples, because he has already committed this dosham. So he requested his disciple to perform a rite, a ritual, the rite, R-I-T, rite. So they had to perform the rite for 7 days. So they had to perform the rites for the full 7 days, 24/7, and they had to fast all 7 days. They cannot eat anything. So some of the disciples obviously were saying, he has committed dosham and why should we suffer? I cannot even skip one meal and I have to fast for 7 days? No way. They were grumbling. Somebody was like me. So they were grumbling because they had to undergo severe tapas, the penance of fasting 24/7, doing that rite ritual for getting the Acharyan rid of the Brahmahati dosham. Something that the Acharyan had done, they had to perform. For Acharyan, we can do anything. Acharya Bhakti, Acharyadiga Devatam Samadikam Anyamna Manyamahe, Swami Desikan mentioned. We would not even consider any god equal to the Acharyan, because Acharyan is the one who completely transformed us. God is just letting us do whatever that we want to do, because he has given us conditional freedom as a Jivatma. Whereas Acharya says, no, don't do that, do this, perform Trikala Sandhyavandanam, make sure you do this, and he transforms us with his kataksham, with his grace, with his daya. He gives us knowledge, he gives us redemption. So one can do anything for the Acharya. So we should not even grumble that he has asked us to fast for 7 days. So they were grumbling. And there was a Shishya by name Yagnavalkya. Yagnavalkya was one of the disciples of sage Vaishampayana. Yagnavalkya was a great Bhagavata, great Shishya, Jnani. His Anushtanam, his Vairagyam, his Jnanam, his Bhakti, tremendous. So he was a shining, the number one disciple among the disciples of sage Vaishampayana. And sage Yagnavalkya wished to help his classmates as well as the Acharya. And he was confident on his own self. So he said, dear friends, do not worry, you don't have to fast. I will fast for all 7 days and I will perform the ritual for Acharya so that he will be getting rid of the dosham. Because I would do that, you don't have to worry. I would do it single-handedly, Bhagavad Kripai. Bhagavad Anugraham, Acharya Anugraham. He said, sage Vaishampayana heard about it. He misunderstood the intention of sage Yagnavalkya. He thought this guy thinks that he is a best student. He thinks that he is a Vairagyam is tremendous. His Anushtanam is good. So he wants to show off. He wants to show his arrogance by saying, you don't worry, I will do single-handedly. I will do for Acharya. I can do it. So he thought, he misunderstood sage Yagnavalkya's good intention. So sage Vaishampayana didn't want Yagnavalkya to do that. He thought sage Yagnavalkya has got false ego, false pride. He was arrogant. Sage Vaishampayana thought. So he accused sage Yagnavalkya of possessing this arrogance. He said, I am very sorry, Yagnavalkya. A student of mine, my Shishya, has the guts, has the audacity to call my other students as weak, call my other students as something they cannot do, and they are bereft of tejas, they are bereft of their anushtanam, vairagyam. I regret that you are my disciple, he exclaimed. Sage Vaishampayana hoped that Yagnavalkya would seek forgiveness, and Yagnavalkya would say, I am sorry, I should not have said that, I please forgive me. He thought he would seek pardon and he would agree to perform the prayaschittam, the expiatory rite along with the other disciples, other student. He thought, sage Vaishampayana thought. And Yagnavalkya had a good intention. There was nothing wrong with Yagnavalkya's offer. He wanted to be nice to the students, to the fellow classmates, and say, because they were also grumbling. So that is why he offered to help. He said, don't worry, I would take care, I would do on your behalf and save our Acharya. And hence Yagnavalkya was hurt by sage Vaishampayana's such response. So he said, Yagnavalkya said, sir, with due regards, if you cannot understand my true intentions, then there is no point. There is no point in my being your student anymore. You have not understood my true intention, retorted Yagnavalkya. And sage Vaishampayana was even more hurt now. It has become a tit for tat. That's exactly the way I feel also, Yagnavalkya. So leave my school immediately. You can leave me. Sorry, I don't want you to be my student. You can leave. Sage Vaishampayana told Yagnavalkya with the thinking that Yagnavalkya would realize that he is going to be expelled from the school, and he would come around and seek pardon. I am sorry, due to my reflex action, on the spur of the moment, I said that I seek your forgiveness. He thought he would seek pardon. I never meant to insult anyone, Yagnavalkya said. I never meant to hurt anyone. I never meant with wrong, ill intentions. I never wanted to show off that I could do. If this is the way Devari feels, if you feel, Guru, I will leave the school now. It is your command, your order. I would leave. And Yagna and Sage Vaishampayana said, you may leave school, but whatever you have learnt, you have to return everything. It was, how could you give back what you learnt? Whatever you learnt, because Sage Vaishampayana had taught him the Vedanta, the statements about the God, the self, everything. So Sage Yagnavalkya said, okay, I would give back whatever I had learnt. And he gave back his knowledge. He gave back whatever he had learnt. How did he give back? The statement says he vomited his knowledge. It was as if it is a physical form. It just means that he rejects the learnings back. It is like we undo in the computer, we undo 10 times. So whatever the 10 commands that we did before all get erased. And then you can redo. So perhaps it was possible those days. So he vomited his jnana. And this vomit which was like a tejas, which was like a fire, because it is not like what we vomit. It's like a fire, and it is the Taittiriya Veda. And Sage Vaishampayana commanded the other disciples to accept, to learn whatever that came out of Yagnavalkya, the fire, so that the Krishna Yajurveda, which was taught by Sage Yagnavalkya to Sage Vaishampayana to Sage Yagnavalkya, could be retained. So, but it is against Shastras to consume what other has consumed and given out. It's not right, because one should not take the spittle, the vomit, all that, as per Shastra. But it is okay if it is a bird. For example, Neruppu Koli, the ostrich, they can take the fire, they can eat the fire. So, though it is against Shastras for these humans, for the rishis, to take those knowledge, the jnanam, which came out of Yagnavalkya in the form of fire, in the form of vomit, which was like a fire. They have taken, these disciples took the form of ostrich, the form of titli bird, taitli they say. So this titli bird, they became, and with that they can consume those fire, those they can consume, and this became the titli bird took, and hence it was called Taittiriya Upanishad. And this narration shows that the restriction imposed on us by the Shastras are only when we are associated with this body. If I take the body of a Brahmin, I am supposed to follow certain anushtana, certain ritual, certain code of conduct, certain things which I should do, certain things which I should not do, certain things which I should eat, certain things which I should not eat. There is certain Shastras which says if I have the Upavidinam, the Punal, the sacred thread, I have to perform Trikala Sandhya Vandanam, all that, Brahma Yajna, all that is prescribed. Whereas if I take some other body, I need not have to do, because it's based on the Varna Ashrama Dharma. So the Shastras, the restrictions imposed by the Shastras are only when we are associated with the body, and we should not reject it. We should continue to perform that as long as we are in that body. By breaking or by taking that form of the ostrich, the disciples avoided papam because for taking the vomit, the fire that came out of Yagnavalkya. They are not committing any papa because they were only ostrich. They were not the human rishis. So this narration also must have inspired Adi Shankara Acharya, Bhagavad Padal, when he transmigrated into the body of a king to know the dharma associated with the Grahastha. So if you read the life history of Adi Shankara Bhagavad Padal, there was one action which he should show as a Grahastha, which he was not aware, because he was a sannyasi right from his childhood. So he entered into the body of a king to know the dharma associated with a Grahastha ashrama without compromising on the sannyasa ashrama dharma. So probably this ostrich sambhavam, the incident, must have inspired him. Now going back to sage Yagnavalkya. So Yagnavalkya walked out of the ashram of sage Vaishampayana. He meditated, he had the dhyanam of Lord Sun, the Surya Mandala, because you know in the as an Antaryami, the indweller of the Surya Mandalam is Shreema Narayana, and that is what we meditate when we do the Gayatri Japam. So Dhyaya Sada Savitra Mandala Madhyavarti. So we say that. So after leaving the Gurukulam of sage Vaishampayana, he meditated upon the Lord of Surya Mandala, Lord Sriman Narayana, who existed as the Antaryami of Surya, as the indweller of Surya. He appeared before sage Yagnavalkya in the form of Hayagrivan, the white horse faced Hayagriva with Shankha Chakram, and requested the sage to ask for a boon, ask for a varam. Sage Yagnavalkya requested Lord Sri Lakshmi Hayagriva to teach him the Vedas, which was to be taught, which should have been taught by sage Vaishampayana. Now can you please teach? As per the sage request, Yagnavalkya's request, Lord Hayagriva taught him Yajurveda, which is called Shukla Yajurveda. Shukla is white to sage Yagnavalkya. The Veda which was taught by Vaishampayana to other disciples is Krishna Yajurveda. So the Yajurveda taught by sage Vaishampayana is known as Krishna Yajurveda, which is a mixture of prayers and formula and all that. So after learning Shukla Yajurveda, sage Yagnavalkya established himself as a great sage, and he went to the court of King Janaka Maharishi, Janaka Rajan, Maharaj, and he was a Raja Yogi, Raja Rishi, and Brihadaranyaka Upanishad is part of this Yajurveda. It clearly states that everything, including the Jivatma and Achit, form the body of the Lord. The verse from Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, Yaha Atmani Tishtan, Atmanam Antaro Yamayitiyam Atmana Veda. So, this great Aranyaka imparted in forest, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, it forms the last part of Shatapatha Brahmana and Shukla Yajurveda. It consists of 6 chapters, each chapter with several Brahmanas and sub-Brahmana, Upa-Brahmana. So this is the biggest, Brihat. Brihat means biggest Upanishad, both in size and in content. The core teaching of all the Upanishads seem to meet in this Upanishad because it was taught by none other than Sri Lakshmi Hayagrivan to sage Yagnavalkya. Quite a large part of this Upanishad is considered highly philosophical, and it is also speculation on rituals. So people observed, they were able to observe the images of the entire universe, and this wonderful greatest of Upanishad dialogues is found in this Upanishad. Women of substance participate in dialogues in this Upanishad. The famous dialogue between Yagnavalkya and his wife Maitreyi is given in Maitreyi Brahmana. Yagnavalkya had two wives, Maitreyi and Katyayani, two wives. And the Maitreyi, when he was about to leave to the forest, and he told his wives, I am leaving, I take permission from you. And Maitreyi, and whatever wealth you want, I will give. What is it that you are looking for? The Maitreyi said, I do not need any wealth. I despise wealth. I prefer jnanam from you about Brahman. Jnanam about Brahman. So Yagnavalkya was pleased with Maitreyi's request. He instructs Maitreyi in Atma Jnanam. And he talks about the soul, the Jivatma, and the Supreme Soul, the Paramatma, and the universe, and the avenue for liberation. A summary of Yagnavalkya's discourse to Maitreyi is given. Just please note, Maitreyi, verily the husband is not dear to the wife. It's not because he is your husband, you are dear, he is dear to you. You like him, you love him, you adore him. It's not because of that. It's because you may love the husband, but you are loving the Antaryami in him. That is why it is his sankalpam that you love him. You may love the wife, but you may love the self, but it's because of the supreme self, the indweller inside him, inside her. Because of that you love her. It is his sankalpam. And same with the sons, same with the father, everyone. The same style of upanyasam, the discourse, the kalakshepam, the teaching to Maitreyi on the wealth, on the cattle, on the cows, on the Brahmin, on the class, on the Kshatriyas, on the world, on the Devas, on the Vedas, the creatures, everything. Verily, the Supreme Self, Paramatma, is to be heard, is to be perceived, is to be marked, O Maitreyi. When the Self has been realized, when you understand the indweller in your Atma, in your body, in the universe, in everything, inside everything, when the Self, Supreme Self has been seen, heard, perceived and known, then all this is known. And in fact, King Janaka, there is a Gargi Brahmana. King Janaka wanted to identify the greatest Brahmajnani by offering 1,000 cows and also gold to the greatest Brahmajnani in the assembly of rishis and everyone. Only he accepted Yagnavalkya accepted the challenge to be questioned by all the wise men residing or who were there in Janaka's court that time. And of course, and a woman by name Gargi also takes part in the debate to ask questions to Yagnavalkya. She asks about the support for the world. She asks for the support of the entire Prapancham. And Yagnavalkya said, it is water. Okay, what is that which supports water? He says, Vayu. Yagnavalkya says, when she asks, what is that support Vayu? Yagnavalkya mentions, you cannot keep on arguing for the sake of argument. If you are arguing or asking question to learn, because if you are jealous that I am responding and you are asking, then your head will roll. Because it should be with sincerity. Whenever you want to ask somebody question, be inquisitive. If you ask, it is because of learning you are asking, not because with an arrogance and to catch him at the wrong foot. Now I will get you, like that. So she stops, but after a few moments she gets to get really inquisitive, sincere. She asks with two more final questions. Promising to ask only two questions, she asks about the support of the universe as a whole, and the answer is Akasha. To the second question, what the support for Akasha? And the reply given by sage Yagnavalkya is Supreme Brahman himself. And he also mentions about the Antaryami Brahmana in this Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. It relates to the Antaryami, the indweller, the inner ruler who controls the world. He elaborates that the inner ruler, the indweller, who is the Antaryami, who is Shreema Narayana, he is there in the earth, in the water, in the fire, in the sky, in the air, heaven, sun, space, darkness, light, all beings, the life breath, the speech, the eye, the ear, the manas, the skin, the vijnanam, everywhere. So Ramanuja makes use of this Antaryami Brahmana text to advance his concept of Sharira Shariri Bhava, Sharira Atma Bhava. And hence he does not violate any statement in the Upanishad. He makes sure that all Vedic statements are true. All Upanishadic statements, whether it is Abedam or whether it is Bedam, whether it is Dvaitam or Advaitam, all would respond, will be in coherence, will synchronize with this Antaryami Brahmana. Adiyan. Kavitarkika Simhaya Kalyana Gunashaline Srimate Venkateshaya Vedanta Gurave Namaha. Dhanyosmi.